Good morning. I'm Janice Cannon, the worship associate for today. Welcome to you, old friends and new, young and old. You are an essential part of our celebration today. Whether today is your first or your 1000th Sunday in our midst, we're stronger because you are with us. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here. Okay, the main announcement today is on a wall in the social hall are wish cards from the Davidson River Giving Tree. The cards on this tree give information on students that are determined to be in real need. Knowing that there's a person in the community that cares for them is so meaningful to the students and the staff. When you take a card, please wrap the gifts, label with the student number on the card, and bring the gifts to UUTC by Friday, December 15th. Or you can deliver the gifts directly to the school by that date. Today we had written joys and sorrows due to the length of the service. And I have two people who have expressed these. Gail Myers has a joy that her son Michael is visiting with them for the weekend. And Michael Solomon lit a candle for his 99-year-old friend who is now in hospice care, and his friend's 94-year-old wife who's striving bravely with support from family and friends to make Paul's remaining days as comfortable as possible at home. Know that we are here for you and support you in your joys and your sorrows. The Wild Geese by Wendell Berry. Horseback on Sunday morning, harvest over, we taste persimmon and wild grape, sharp, sweet of summer's end. In time's maze over fall fields, we name names that went west from here, names that rest on graves. We open a persimmon seed to find the tree that stands in promise, pale in the seed's marrow. Geese appear high over us, pass, and the sky closes. Abandon, as in love or sleep, holds them to their way, clear in the ancient faith. What we need is here. And we pray not for new earth or heaven, but to be quiet in heart and in eye clear. What we need is here. Carol Flake will be giving our sermon this morning. She's a distinguished professor of Emerita from the University of South Carolina in Columbia. While teaching developmental psychology at the university, Carol completed an additional degree in religion and culture. For the past 20 years, during her retirement, refirement, rewirement, she trained as a Jungian-oriented dream worker and spiritual director. Most recently, she's become fascinated with Celtic spirituality and how that went hand in hand with early Christianity in Scotland and Ireland. Carol lives in Conisty Falls, shared a multi-generational home with Dan and Tim Clem, and 3 cats. Today she introduces her various encounters with wild geese and considers how they have shaped her own spiritual understandings. Our opening hymn today is number 1052, The Oneness of Everything. If you will stand as you will and join us. Nature's harmony in an architecture so entwined, like the birds whose patterns grace the sky and carry all who join in love expanding. The message of peace will rise in flight, taking the weight of the world upon its wings. In the oneness of everything. Species in the dance of trees who stir before the first breath of wind is yet received. Trust in the song becoming one with the dance, and all mysteries can be believed. Songs of lifetime past that touch are written in the earth ever giving, and now to maintain the harmony gives to us all lives worth living. For the oneness of everything. Still we seek to find a truth that we might understand and reduce to terms defined. Vast and immeasurable time and space is overwhelmingly designed. Oh, passing years just might I know the faith that winters in the heart to be reborn in spring, to hear and to feel the pulse of life, enters my soul as a song to sing of the oneness of lighting our chalice this morning. We kindle a flame we trust will lead us forward as we travel in unknown lands, where the question, shall I ever get there, resounds, a clear, pure note in every silence. And today we'll be lighting the Advent candle too. Today's the first Sunday in Advent. On this day, the first day of Advent, we light a candle for hope. May the seeds of peace, joy, and love that are planted in the world take hold in our hearts and stretch towards the light. Carol Flake will be doing our words of wisdom for all ages this morning.
Well, has anyone here ever gone to the Wild Goose Festival? Well, Dan and I went this year. We finally got down there this July during the hottest days ever recorded in human history. Turns out the major speakers were all focused on climate change. They had a lot of music, a lot of food, a lot of ice cream, a lot of fun and a lot of art, and about 2,000 crazy people camping out. Fortunately, Dan and I had friends who lived nearby. And after being there, I was really excited, and I thought, well, I want to go back and share this with my congregation. And about October, my main problem was I still wanted to speak to my congregation, but I didn't have a clue what I was going to say. Well, I was standing around the kitchen one day drinking coffee with Tim, Dan's son, who lives with us, and I was hanging out there, and I said, Tim, oh, God, I got to give this sermon, and I don't have a clue what I want to say, and these are all my ideas. And Tim said, well, have you ever seen the movie Fly Away Home? And I said, well, yeah, I did, but I kind of forgot it or something. But we all decided we were going to watch it, so we, pulled it up the way you do. And one day, my grandchildren were here. They were 14 and, like 13 and 12 now, and they actually don't want to talk to you. They want to play with their devices. But they came, and Tim and grandchildren, Dan and I, got a bunch of snacks, sat down in my living room, we watched it. It's about a story of a 14-year-old girl named Amy, and she had lost her mother, and she was sent to live with her father, and she was really angry and confused. She's really, she had an attitude, but it was just because she was so upset. But then one day, a bunch of lumberjacks were cutting down the forest nearby, and Amy found a nest of goose eggs. By the way, this is based on a true story. The adult geese had been driven away when the forest was destroyed, and Amy then, went and got a wool sweater, and she gathered the eggs and brought them all back to her father's house. And she got out her books and her devices, no doubt, and studied how to keep those eggs warm enough. And turns out her father, Thomas, built lightweight airplanes. That was his hobby. And he stepped in and started to help her learn about the habits of these geese and their migration patterns. Well, it turns out, and I did not know this, but geese actually have to be taught by their parents to fly and to migrate. I did not know this. And if they're not, they don't migrate. And the story that unfolds is heartwarming as the geese bond with the girl. And you all have all seen the pictures of the little geese walking around behind their parents, or their mother, I guess. And they bonded with Amy. Well, okay, now it's time for them to migrate, and they're in Canada, and so what do? Well, Thomas, this is the part that is the true story. Thomas created a lightweight airplane, and Amy guided the geese to learn to fly and to migrate since their parents are not there to teach them. Well, the truth be told, the movie didn't help me much with my sermon at all. But it did help with family bonding as Lorelei and Elena watched the tender-hearted movie with Dan and Tim and me. Dan had tears in his eyes as Amy and her father learned to love each other after many years of estrangement. Besides the importance of bonding to the survival of the young animals and families, we could learn more to improve human behavior from observing flocks of geese. When geese migrate, they take turns being leader of the flock. When the lead goose is tired, the leader drops back and lets another goose take the lead. When one goose is injured, 2 geese drop out of formation and settle to the ground to help. And the flapping of the geese in the back of the V-shaped formation assists the lead goose. It's got to do with aerodynamics and all that kind of stuff. And the honking of the geese in the back of the flock, unlike people who are driving down the road honking at the people in front. But anyway, with geese, it's helpful because the honking helps the geese in the front, encourages them to go forward. So we humans could learn lessons from these geese when we work together on our own teams. That's the words of wisdom for today. Thank you.
Please join us as we sing the children out. Peace be with you and our blessing. Peace be with you and our blessing. Peace be with you and our blessing as you leave us now. For our offering today, we ask that you give an offering as a way to support our church and others who are helping our community. Our social action charity for this month is The Haven. This will be the last Sunday for that. The brown envelope in the collection basket is for donations to The Haven. Ushers, please come forward. For the beauty of the Thank you for your generosity in supporting our church and our community. The anthem this morning is by a man who was here just a couple of weeks ago, John Gage. Some of you guys were here for that. And his song, Circle of the Sun, got Carol's and my attention and thought it would fit beautifully with this service. So enjoy.
Hold the sunshine, the limbs hold the wind holds the clouds. Clouds fill the ocean when the raindrops pour. The oceans are holding the shore. The sea and the shore, hand in hand, greet the dawning of life, footprints in the sand. From the very beginning to the place where we stand, we're drawing our life from the land. In its circular motion, the moon moves the ocean, gives us the notion of true harmony. The cycle enfolds us, creation holds us in the heart of life's great mystery. We're travelers all on this little blue ball. Hear the sounds of the people, hear the wild birds call, hear the voices of creatures blending as one. Together we circle the sun. In its circular motion, the moon moves the ocean, that gives us the notion of true harmony. The cycle enfolds us, creation holds us in the heart of life's great mystery. And we're travelers all on this little blue ball. Hear the sounds of the people, hear the wild birds call, hear the voices of creatures blending as one. Together we circle the sun. Together we circle the sun.
We are travelers all on this little blue ball. Together we circle the sun. Well, the singer you just heard is John Gage. He's an old friend of Dan's. I literally an old friend, but they've known each other for 40 years. He was with us for that wonderful Wednesday, and boy, what a great occasion that was. I thank everybody who organizes those wonderful Wednesdays because it's such a great opportunity for us to get together as a community and share food. Earl and Ann Rabb are not here today because Earl had surgery, but they sent me a note saying they would love to be here. Ann and Earl Rabb are the creators of the wonderful Wednesdays here. And thank you everybody else for your help today. The sound and the video folks and Janice Cannon, she created all that beautiful imagery for those songs that we saw. And the songwriters and the musicians and everybody else who worked hard to make this service beautiful. And I have to say, Catherine Burley, she's just magic in terms of finding all the images that I need. the songs and images that I chose and that Catherine helped me find tell the story that I'm sharing with you, so please notice them well. What I really want to convey is more of a feeling than a set of concepts. And I want to introduce you to some modern day prophets. And I want to encourage you to find your own prophetic voice. And many of you have. For example, Jim Hardy spoke to us the other night about trauma. He's found his own prophetic voice. John Gage's latest album is on YouTube, and I love to just sit there and listen to it. It's entitled Circles of Our Lives. How many people here feel like their lives are going around in circles now? Or maybe they have gone in circles in the past. Mine certainly is and has. John Gage, see, I love singer-songwriters, and I've loved them for a long time. They're poets. They're true poets. They put their poetry to music. And they are prophetic voices telling the stories that we need to hear today and to help carry us through these challenging times. But John is really not talking about going around in endless circles in a hopeless way. John is actually inviting us to tune into a state of being and wisdom that expresses our unity, to encounter the cycles of birth, life, death, resurrection, the endless cycles of nature moving from spring to summer, to fall, to winter, to spring, linking the cycles of our lives with Gaia, with nature herself. Another great singer-songwriter is Carrie Newcomer. Her latest CD is called Wild Mercy. Upon releasing Wild Mercy, Carrie laments, "Right now, it feels like there is a great darkness in the world as we face the challenges of these troubled times. We are inundated with news. We are inundated with news stories and images of so much suffering. It weighs heavily on our hearts and our minds. Many of us are waking up in the night worried or afraid or just feeling in over our heads. Honestly, I don't believe human hearts and spirits are designed to live in a 24/7 swirl of tragic or scary news. And deep down, something in our soul knows it is too much. And so what shall we do now, and how shall we live?" Those are the words of Carrie Newcomer. We are truly in a planetary dark night of the soul. Many of us are carrying deep grief, individually and collectively, as we face a barrage of crises. The world needs an outpouring of lament and love to find hope and healing. In a time where religion often fails to meet the demands of our great crises and injustices, we are called to be prophets of divine love. The dark night of the soul was first described by St. John of the Cross, a 16th century monk. He was imprisoned by the Catholic Church, the empire, for what he was teaching about the Carmelite order, which had been founded on a simple life. John of the Cross was calling for a return to the roots of the Carmelites with the ideals of solitude and prayer. During his imprisonment, in just a room not any larger than, it was larger than a phone booth, smaller than my bathroom. During his imprisonment, he experienced a dramatic personal transformation. And he called his experience the luminous darkness. And that experience of luminous darkness explains to us the simultaneous existence of deep suffering and intense joy in the saints and the mystics. Deep suffering, intense joy. Our global dark night of the soul requires a personal transformation as well as a planetary one. And so, what shall we do and how shall we live? Well, we must bring this global crisis back to human size, says Carrie, or else we get overwhelmed. One of her new songs is entitled Singing in the Dark. Carrie was visiting Thomas Merton's hermitage at Gethsemane, Kentucky, and she was there to do a few songs around the fire or something, and she decided to get up in the morning at 3:30 and chant with the monks. And Carrie was finding that like really rewarding to do, but she started talking to the monks and she asked them, how does it work to get up this morning, every morning at 3:30 and chant? And one of them pointed out to her that is when the crisis hotlines light up with calls all over from people in despair. So by singing in the dark at that time of the morning, the monks are hoping to create a resonance that people can tap into in those dark hours of the night, the dark night of the soul. Well, it is very interesting to me that some of our major theologians have recently written books detailing this global dark night and give us some guidelines about how to navigate it. I'm going to mention just a few of those. Barbara Brown Taylor, who's a former Episcopal priest, wrote a book called Learning to Walk in the Dark, because sometimes God shows up at night. Catherine Meeks, who's the founder of a Center for Racial Justice in Atlanta, writes, "The night is long, but light comes in the morning." These are her meditations for racial healing. And Otis Moss III, who's the current minister of Barack Obama's Chicago church, writes, "Dancing in the Darkness, Spiritual Lessons for Thriving in Turbulent Times." Well, our Spiritual Explorers group just read that book by Otis Moss. And it was really good. From my research and understanding, from my personal research and understanding, Black people have essentially been living a dark night of the soul ever since 1619, when they began to be placed into slavery, arriving captive and starved in a strange country with foreign religious practices and community standards. And Moss, I guess overall I am an optimist. I like joy more than I do sorrow, but it's both. But Moss tells about the dark night of the soul that he was going through, because when Barack Obama was running for president, he got over 100 letters telling him that he would be killed and that his children would be killed and that they would come and attack his church. So needless to say, he was scared to death. Well, if I start telling you about that whole book, we will never get out of here. But anyway, you can borrow the book from the Spiritual Explorers people, or you can buy your own copy. His congregation was also being threatened, and there were people out there marching in front of the church. And what he invited the choir to do was to go out there and sing, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine." And the people didn't attack. I always remember back when our minister emeritus used to always have us sing, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine." Dan also particularly likes that song, so that's what they did. The choir, the black choir, went out and sang, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine," and the people got in their buses and they left. Well, today I'm not focusing on the dark night of the soul itself. Instead, I want to talk about what happens 1 minute after midnight. What happens when the dawn comes. We need to find and retain or regain our own prophetic voice. Well, it turns out that prophets do not have to be highly educated, powerful, or well-known. They're just everyday people like us, perched at the edge or the inside of our institutions, distant enough to critique injustice, but close enough to be heard. There's an ancient tale that records the story of a flock of wild geese who, with their raucous squawks, forewarned the lookouts in a Roman city-state of an invading army. Throughout history, prophetic cries like the calls of the wild geese have alerted the church to the need for renewal and reform. John Phillip, a former minister of the Anglican Church in Scotland, and now a self-described member of the Christian diaspora. Well, a lot of people are asking me what a diaspora is, but it's like you're no longer in your homeland. It's like I was a former member of a church, and I dropped out of that church and went 1,000,000 miles away, and now I think I'm part of the Christian diaspora with the same values that I had, but not the same doctrines that I had. Notice how many of these people that I said, Barbara Brown Taylor, a former Episcopal priest, John Phillip Newell, a former Anglican minister. A lot of people have joined the Christian diaspora. Anyway, the diaspora means that we are displaced from our original churches. And anyway, John Phillip Newell, he's mainly about Celtic spirituality. He clearly says in his latest book, our old order is not working politically, socially, environmentally, religiously. In the Celtic Wisdom tradition that John Phillip teaches, the Holy Spirit is represented not as a peaceful dove, but as a wild goose, revealing a spirit which is passionate, noisy, and courageous. It really sounds like a flock of Unitarian Universalists to me. Wild geese remind us with their harsh and exciting voices that spirit cannot be contained or tamed. Spirit works through ordinary human beings like you and me to bring a healing and unifying presence to all of creation. The work of renewing and reforming is never done in isolation, but as part of a community like ours. Spiritual pilgrimage has been a feature of the Celtic world. By the way, the Celtic world used to be all over Europe, Spain, France, everywhere. Then it ended up getting pushed mostly up into Scotland and Ireland. But like 500 BC, the Celtic world was all over Europe. So spiritual pilgrimage has been a feature of the Celtic world over the centuries and continues today. Wild geese have a strong impulse to return to the same place each year, flying south in the fall, north in the spring. Their pilgrimage is directed by the seasons of the year and by their parents, who teach them the patterns of migration. In the Celtic world, the wild geese are the harbingers of spring and the messengers of resurrection. Unlike wild geese, peregrine falcons do not migrate. Peregrine falcons wander far and wide, searching for their nourishment. Like the falcon, our personal spiritual pilgrimage may have been one of peregrination. In a journey of peregrination, we set sail into the unknown in search of new beginnings. Many of us, for example, left our own religious paths, the paths of our childhood, the ones we were taught to follow by our parents, in search of a religious path more resonant with our own authentic selves. And this begins the story of my own peregrination, the finding of my own prophetic voice. Well, at least part of it. I first heard the story of the Wild Geese when I was involved with Women's Spirit. A whole flock of us women from what was then our own Thomas Jefferson district of the Unitarian Universalist Association, we decided to create an organization to meet over there at the mountain, which is our retreat center. And we had completed the curriculum that the Unitarian Universalist had developed called Rise Up and Call Her Name. It was a curriculum developed for women, and it's based on the historical study of the divine feminine imagery that was in ancient Greece and all over the world, actually, but Rise Up and Call Her Name was mainly focused on ancient Greece. And we wanted to continue those same experiences because a lot of the churches had used that curriculum. I loved it and I participated in it a lot of times. But we decided to gather a lot of the women over at the mountain. First, we did it once a year, and then we did it twice a year. And I was involved in that in the late 80s, and then off and on since then. We decided to create a different model of leadership, a more woman-centered type of leadership than that experienced in our male-dominated hierarchical institutions that most of us were working in. Our leadership model would be based on the patterns of the Wild Geese. We would rotate leadership so no one got tired. We would remember to provide words of support, to provide the energy to keep our flock moving. We would provide safe spaces for each other and so on. And we actually did organize ourselves using that model of the Wild Geese. Time passed. I retired from the University of South Carolina. I figured I would spend the rest of my life playing in mud to heal myself from the academia, which had characterized my university career. That actually is a form of dementia, to live totally out of your left brain. It is. Maybe you've seen it, but even though I had left the Christian church many years ago, I still held many interest in the field of religion and culture. Perhaps I was already part of the Christian diaspora and just didn't know what to call myself. So I became a potter, and I volunteered for Journey into Wholeness, which was a Jungian Episcopalian organization that ran for 30 years and dissolved once its leaders passed. Once I started diving into dream work and Jungian psychology, I became very attracted to the progressive Episcopalian groups who are conducting programs at the Canuga Conference Center over there, that way. I trained there as a dream worker and a spiritual director. During that training, I learned that the best way to do spiritual direction with Unitarian Universalists, because, I kept saying, my God, you can't do spiritual direction with Unitarian Universalists because they don't take direction. You can't teach them how to migrate because they will not listen. Well, anyway, I learned that you offer them a poem and say, find a poem that really speaks to you now and memorize it. Because as you're memorizing it, it goes deeper inside. And I decided to memorize the poem Wild Geese by the only Unitarian Universalist saint I know. Y'all know who that is? Yeah, Mary Oliver. When Mary was interviewed at the end of her life, she said that she saw herself as a praise poet. In other words, Her poems are psalms. Her later poems, her earlier poems were different, but at the end of her life, her poems were psalms. I was excited to learn that a modern iconographer has created an icon with Mary Oliver's portrait, surrounded by a halo of gold leaf, which depicts the saints in medieval icons. Now, we could not show that due to copyright laws, but if you want to see it afterwards, it's lying perfectly flat on this table, so we don't show it on the screen. It took me over a year to memorize that poem. I got stuck on the first few lines. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees 100 miles through the desert repenting. Well, this struck me deeply since I had been indoctrinated into a religion that emphasizes guilt and original sin. Every line of this poem has stayed with me like a golden thread, guiding me on my peregrinations. The part that is giving me the most comfort now is you only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. This applies to my family, to my women friends, to my dream group, many of whom I recruited to come here today because I was afraid we wouldn't have anybody attending due to the fact that it's Thanksgiving. So if you see a lot of strange faces, they're my friends and family and stuff. Anyway, the soft animal on my body loving what it loves, I was just like, I've got a fire in my living room. What a blessing. And I sit there pondering what I'm going to say to y'all, and my cat, Rosie, jumps up in my lap. Rosie is a Buddhist cat because she was brought up by Carol Burke, who's a friend of mine who couldn't keep her. So Rosie jumps up in my lap and just purrs and purrs and purrs. So I start noticing, let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. You can do that with grandchildren too when they're small, but when they get to be 13, not so much. It's a sad transition. Dan and I found ourselves in July during the hottest day ever recorded on the planet, attending the Wild Goose Festival in Union Grove, North Carolina. That's really close to where I was born and raised. That was a T-shirt that Dan, I think he took a picture of the T-shirt, but he did not buy it. The Wild Goose is an outdoor festival, mostly camping. It's progressive, faith-based folks celebrating spirit, justice, music, and art. It looks like a bunch of, well, I don't know, because a lot of them are really, really young people, and I'm happy about that, but if you could imagine an old hippie encampment, but they're young, not old like us. Okay, there we met Bill McKibben. I had never seen Bill in person. He's an environmentalist who's calling us elders into action. Well, today, by the way, Advent is the Sunday of hope. Talk about a man with hope. Bill McKibben is a man with hope. Bill has created an organization of people over 60, which he calls the Third Act. Bill believes we have a final chance to finance climate change initiatives before it is too late. You can read about Bill's journey as an environmental activist who, by the way, was successful in halting the Keystone Pipeline in his memoir. I love this title. Here's the title of his memoir: The Flag, the Cross, and the Station Wagon. A graying American looks back at his suburban childhood and wonders what the hell happened. And a lot of us UUs are wondering what the hell happened. Thank you, Catherine, for putting up the info. Bill says his activism is still fueled by his faith, and he regularly attends a Methodist church in his small Vermont town. He has a whole flock of geese, the younger people, to support his prophetic voice and actions. He figures we got money, but we don't have the get up and go to go out there and do environmental activism, so we ought to send our money to support the young people so they can get out there and do the environmental activism. And I think he's right. Anyway, okay, so our most recent peregrination was over to Montreat in Black Mountain. I wanted Dan to meet John Phillip Newell, whose latest book is Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul. I have been stalking John Phillip and his Celtic spirituality for 10 years or so, and our Spiritual Explorers group will be reading his new book starting January the 11th. You're warmly invited to join us. We meet here. And I'm also thrilled to hear through the grapevine that the Center for Spiritual Wisdom is in the process of bringing John Phillip Newell to Brevard College next October. Wow. I've been everywhere to see him. Lake Junaluska, everywhere. And he's coming here. I am so excited for his prophetic voice to join us in Brevard. He's also a man of hope. I know I've left a lot of loose threads in this flight of the falcon and the wild geese. Excuse me. My time has expired now, but your time to find your own prophetic voice continues. And today we will end our service the same way I've ended every service I've done in the last 2 or 3 years, Blue Boat Home. So I invite you to stand and sing. You're gonna see the imagery. Stand.